Hi Daisies, welcome back. It's Tink again. I am here with our video that accompanies step number 5, engineer. So make sure you've watched all of the videos leading up to this before you move on to this next step, because we are going to engineer a spinner and or a counter cube, whichever you are going to use for your board game. So engineers are people who like to know how things work. They design and build things people use every day, like computers, phones, bridges, and cars. Or in this case, board games and board game spinners and counter cubes. So spinners and counter cubes are what we use to get our characters to move around our board game. So I have put together one of each to show you an easy way to do it at home. First, we'll start with the spinner. What I used to create my spinner was cardstock, cardboard, and markers. So the first thing I did was took some cardstock and cut it into a circle, and I colored the circle with different game board commands on it. So for example, you can see here that if you spin and it lands here, that means your character moves back 2 spaces. If you spin and the spinner lands here, your character moves up 2 spaces. If you spin and it lands in the orange, it means switch places with any player. And my personal favorite, if you spin and it lands on yellow, that means you take 1 food card, because if you remember, the point of my game is to travel around the world and eat as much food as possible. So this is the kind of spinner that I'm going to use. Now, this is kind of flimsy, so I decided that I need to use cardboard to make it a little sturdier as well. And so I cut a piece of cardboard out of this box that had some bread in it that I had laying around the house. So we're using some recycled products here on our design challenge. And I am going to secure the cardstock to the cardboard using glue or tape or whatever you'd like to use. So now we have the base of our spinner, but we need to put something on it that'll actually make it spin. And this is something really easy that you can do very quickly. So the next 2 items that you need to make your spinner are paper clips and thumbtacks. Be careful using the thumbtacks because they are sharp. So if you need help, ask an adult in your house. So what I'm going to do is take a paper clip. I think I'll use a bigger one like this. Okay. And I'm going to angle my computer down so you can see this a little bit better, what I'm going to be doing. So I want this to act as my spinner piece. So I'm going to put it in the middle of the board, of our spinner board, but I need to secure it. So I'm going to use a thumbtack and push it right down in the middle of my spinner board. And give it a little bit of space. See how it's not all the way down to the cardboard? So now I can spin my paper clip. And if you want, you can extend it out even longer and pull this part all the way out to make it a little longer. And that way, when you go to spin it again, there won't be any mistake as to where your spinner lands. Okay, so that's one way that you can get your characters to travel around the board is using a spinner. Or you can make a counter cube. And you might know a counter cube as dice that you use in a game. A single is called a die. So we are going to be making a die today out of paper. And you can find simple templates on a lot of different websites. Find the one that works best for you, and you can print it out on paper and cut it out. Make sure you cut on the solid lines instead of the dotted lines. So this is what a cube looks like, or a dice looks like, when you flatten it out and smoosh it. So we need to give it some 3-dimension shape, which we need to fold that and use some adhesive accordingly to get our die to keep its shape. So the first thing I want to do before I start folding this is I'm actually going to write numbers in each square. That way when you roll the die or the counter cube in the game, you know how many spaces to move. So let's do that. Here we go. I've got my markers, and I'm going to use all of the different colors that are on my game board. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and last but not least, 6. So now you can see I have all of my numbers written on each side of what this will eventually turn into, which is a die or a counter cube. So now let's go ahead and fold it on all the dotted lines. There we go. Okay, so we folded it on all of the dotted lines, and you can see how eventually you can fold it in on itself and it's going to make a cube. But we have these little tabs that we have to take care of as well. So make sure you fold those in too. And you can make a die out of different kinds of materials. You don't just have to use paper or cardstock or construction paper, anything like that. You can get creative. What else do you think you can make a die out of? Can you use clay or Play-Doh? Or can you come up with a different way to randomly select numbers for a game, like picking numbers out of a hat? Okay, so now, oops, I missed one. Okay, so now I'm going to fold the cube in on itself so that those little tabs are on the inside. And they fold in on each other like so. And the last thing I'm going to do is use a piece of tape and secure some of these loose edges. There we go. I feel like the first part, getting that first piece of tape on is the trickiest because everything wants to pop out. But once you get the first one on, the other ones are easier to follow. Okay, one more piece. Should do the trick for me. There we go. I think that'll work. So now I have a spinner. Oops, get my hand out of the way. Spin it better. I have a spinner that will tell me my command, and I have a counter cube. So when I roll my counter cube or my die, I will move the number of spaces that lands upright. So for example, this, I would move my character 5 spaces, and once I got to those spaces, I would spin and do whatever the spinner tells me to do. And that's how I move my character from place to place around my game board. What are some different ways that you can create spinners or counter blocks? Counter cubes. We mentioned counter cubes can be made with Play-Doh or clay or any type of ideas that you might have. And what about spinners? Do you have items at home that you think you can make a different kind of spinner out of? What about Lego blocks? Or do you have an old fidget spinner at home? I bet you could engineer something out of that. Or if you have old CDs that you don't use, those are already circular shape and they have a hole in the middle and they spin really easily. So how can you take something that you have at home and engineer it into your own unique spinner that is perfect for your board game? All right, have such a good time engineering your spinners and or your counter cubes, and we'll see you in our last video. Bye.